वाहिगुरु जी वाहिगुरु 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 हम अवगुण भरे एक गुण नाही अमृत छाड़ बिखै बिख खाई माया मोह भरम पै भूले सुत दारा स्यो प्रीत लगाई एक उत्तम पंथ सुनियो गुर संगत तिह मलंत जम त्रास मिटाई एक अरदास पाठ कीरत की गुरु रामदास राखो सरनाई। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। So, as the slide says, this is an introduction to Shastars. Das name is Navdeep Singh. I would like to share with you some research that I've compiled over the last few weeks since I was requested to do this presentation. I would like to say from the outset that my knowledge of Shastras is very limited, and there are many others, including Sikhs who are here today, including Ustad Untitled Singh ji of Khalsa school and Shahid Bhai Navdeep Singh ji Gatka Akhada, who have a world of knowledge on this topic, and I'm humbled to have been blessed with the seva. I invite anyone who has anything to add or corrections to make, please feel welcome to share your knowledge with Sangat. And so while this topic may be an introduction to Shastras, I'd like to make a disclaimer that the makeup of the presentation will not focus deeply on different kinds of Shastras and their uses. While I will be sharing some of that information about Shastras with Maharaj's Kripa, we will cover broader topics about their importance, the importance of Shastras and our mindset about them. And so to begin with, what is a Shastra? And I welcome anybody to share what a Shastra is. Hanji. Weapon. Exactly. It's a noun, masculine noun, arm, weapon, armament, weaponry. That's what literally a Shastra is. There are two types of Shastras. There's, in the broadest sense, there are two types of Shastras. Does anybody want to hazard a guess as to what those two types of Shastras are? Hanji?
Shastra and Astra.
Shastras and Astra, Hanji. Let's go over Shastras, which are the wielded weapons. So, the Shastras that are wielded with the hand, they vary in length from short to long, and their purposes are all different. Typically in warfare, the longest Shastra was used first. And as they became either lodged or lost, then the soldier would use progressively shorter Shastras that were on their Kamrakasa. And the reason for this is because maintaining distance from the other side increases the warrior's chances of survival. So, and forgive me, like I mentioned at the outset, we won't be going too deep into these. I would welcome Ustadji and any others to share their insight into them if you would like to. It's most welcome. So there's the barsha, and it's the spear. Which is a very common war weapon and seen across many different nations. So many different systems of martial arts use a spear, and it goes back really far. And so it's a way to reach somebody from a distance and still be able to reuse your Shastra. So whether you're on the ground and reaching up to somebody who's on horseback or vice versa, this extended the reach quite a bit while maintaining that distance to avoid, their sword attack. And so, as far as swords go, there are many types of swords, and they have different uses, different purposes, different styles and features. One with which we are all very familiar is the khanda. The khanda is a double-edged sword. It gives you the ability to use either edge for cutting, and you'll sometimes find that they're given a spine which gives them greater strength. And this one also has something that's quite common, that can be common in longer Shastars, which is the spike. The spike at the pommel is so if you have a 4-foot khanda and the spike at the end, if somebody closes that gap and gets in close to you, then that spike really helps to use as an alternative. Also, it can be used to make it a two-handed shastar as well. And then you have the shamshir. It has a very exaggerated curve. It makes it really good for slashing and moving. So when the slash is performed and then moving on to the next, that having that curve really helps with that, because a longer, straighter edge sword would not as easily allow you to do that because it can get caught in things, whereas the shamshir has this greatly exaggerated curve. And it is also used horseback and on the ground. Then we have the talwar, which is actually quite a versatile shastar, because it can be used on horseback or on the ground. And there are so many variations of this shastar, like having, say, a double edge on the end, or having a fatter end to help with momentum. But it being curved and having quite a secure handle allows you to do something which is called the draw cut, which you may see in, say, some samurai movies where the shastar is in the myan, and then from there you can go straight into a cut, meaning as you draw, you do a cut. So that's possible with the talwar. And a feature, and also it being slightly straighter, it allows you to thrust as well. And a feature that a lot of shastars have is the fuller. And I'm not sure if you can see it very well in this photo, but this groove that you see here, by it having it, the shastar is said to be a fuller blade. And so the grooves actually quite commonly mistaken to be called blood grooves. People think that it actually helps the flow of blood after the shastar is taken out, or for ease of taking the shastar out. But actually, the real purpose of it is actually to lighten the blade and to make it without losing any of its strength. And then we have some close-range daggers. Close-range daggers are usually the last thing after a barsha is used, and perhaps that has fallen away or gotten lodged, and then a sword, and then perhaps after that gets stuck on a shield somewhere or on a dal, then you would pull out from your kamarkasa, and you could have multiples of these close-range daggers, and there are quite a few. Their grips vary, but ultimately they're designed to do the same things, which are to access unprotected areas like the underarms or pierce armor. They wouldn't be as heavy as swords, but their lengths make them pretty inflexible. So there's more power there's more weight behind a single point with these. And I'll just go over some examples here. There's a khanjar, kokri, katar. This is a punch dagger. Probably the most well-known of the armor piercers. There are more variations. Like it can have a hood to protect your hand as well, where you can have a diamond-shaped tip there, which is even better for piercing. And then from there, actually, there's another shastar that it wasn't typically used in wars, but this is about as intimate as a shastar can get, because you see the two rings there, those would go over the index and the pinky, and then it would sit on the inside, and so rest inside the palm of your hand, and it would be concealed quite easily. It's debated whether it is Marathi or Rajput in origin, but its uses were clear, which is to rip through tissue and muscle, and it wasn't typically used in wars again, but kept concealed for planned attacks or assassinations. And so now I'd like to go through a few astars. So astars are projectile weapons. And could anybody give me any examples of astars? Tir kaman, hanji. Chakram, hanji. Is that a hand up?
Niza.
Hanji? Niza, acha. So we have the Chakram, which was mentioned, and so this is a 360-degree blade, and so if it touches, it cuts. And so it was thrown by hand, and yes, and so because it's sharp all the way around, it's quite deadly. And then Tir, as was mentioned as well, it's one of the oldest Shastars, one of the oldest astars, if not the oldest. There's evidence that goes back to stone-tipped arrows 64,000 years ago, and there's evidence of bows going back 10,000 years. And the tips can be made of really anything that was available at the time: obsidian, stone, horn, or anything that was really hard and that was available. And then we have banduk. This is actually Tansiri Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj's topak. It's referenced in Shastar Namala as well. So guns actually do fall in that category of astars. And we can still do darshan of Tansiri Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj's. And so I think perhaps everybody here is familiar with the story of Bhai Navdeep Singh. Well, just to recap, so he used to brag to Maharaji, to Tansiri Guru Gobind Singh Maharaji, about how powerful his personal army was. And so one day 2 artisans from Lahore came and presented him with 2 of these banduks. And so Maharaji asked Bhai Navdeep Singh for 2 volunteers. So he's like, hey, bring 2 of your volunteers. I'd like to test this out. And they were kind of standing like, dude, what are you talking about, right? And but when Maharaji called over to his 2 Gursikhs of his, they were actually tying the slavs at the time. They came running over, and they were kind of fighting to see like, minu pehla goli maro. So Bhai Navdeep Singh was actually very astonished to see the loyalty that Maharaji had from his army. But just a little tidbit there for banduk in our Sikh history. What I'd like to focus on now for some time is why Sikhs should know Shastars. There are very many reasons. I'd like to cover a few. And one that is quite important is it actually helps you understand what Maharaji is expressing in Gurbani by knowing Shastars, by knowing how they work, how they feel, what their qualities are. And an example of that, Mere man prem lago har tir. So the one's appreciation for this pankti is actually enhanced with the knowledge of Shastars. As you know, the English translation could be that my mind is pierced through by the arrow of the Lord's love, of Vaheguruji's love, Harida, Prem. But Tir was used for a particular reason here, we must assume. That Guru Maharaji could have used an example of any sort of Shastra, anything that pierces. But Tir, if we look at it, or if we think about it, can anybody tell me some things about a Tir, of its qualities or the way that it's used? Just anything, there are no wrong answers here. Haji? What you call it?
Goes to the back and comes back.
From distance?
Yeah.
Haji.
It's folded, so whenever you fall,
Ji.
you get a better strength to grow up.
Achari, okay, so you're saying that when you pull back a Shastra, that there's difficulty there, but that difficulty allows you to spring forward?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I never thought of that. That's amazing. And that gives me another appreciation for that Shastra as well. If we look at an arrowhead, you can see that typically, like quite often, they have this curve in the back, or these one or two or more of these barbs at the very back. And so a tir is not something that just kind of goes in and comes out. It's meant to stay lodged. And so when we think about that, about Maharaji's love, that when it pierces the mind, it remains lodged. And if you want to take it a step further, when you pull out a tir, it actually takes a bit of you with it. And so if you want to extend that metaphor, that by losing, I'm not sure you can, but by removing Vaheguru's prem from your mind, you're actually losing a bit of yourself with that. And so I think that, Haji,
also has a very pinpoint aim as well.
Haji?
It has a very pinpoint aim.
Pinpoint aim, Haji.
If you want to pierce the heart, you put it at the heart.
Ji.
The other stuff is just goes onto your heart.
Haji.
I think that's piercing your heart with Gurmani is another way.
Ji, beautiful. Thank you, Ji. Another pankti or another talk here, Garibi Gada Hamari, Khanna Sagale Reina Chari, Is Age Ko Na Teka Vekari, Gur Pure Ehe Gal Sari. And the translation, if we read in English, humility is my spiked club. My dagger, Khanda is Khanda. My Khanda is to be the dust of all men's feet. No evildoer can withstand these weapons. The perfect Guru has given me this understanding. And so look at the first pankti, Garibi Gada Hamari. Does anybody know what Gada is? Gorj, yes. Gorj, a spiked club. And so if you think about the Gorj or the Gada, and again you can see, from the spike that it's a long shastar, or it can be short as well, but it's actually heavy and it's not easy to wield. And so humility, Garibi, is not something that's easily wielded. It's not just a simple, forgive me, no shastar is simple, but relatively, if I may, a short dagger is quite easy to poke here and there. But whereas a gada is something heavy, it takes a lot of energy to actually put this to use. So and the gada, when it hits you, it knocks you off of your feet. And so, it being an offensive weapon, Sri Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj Ji is saying that humility is an offensive tactic. It is not uncommon to see humility used as a defense. Ji. And so when somebody is attacking us, then for us to have nimrata, then at that point, you could say it's relatively easy to have nimrata when you're being attacked, just to to calm things. But to have humility from the outset, Guru Maharaj Ji is saying to make yourselves low first, to have that humility first, and then with that, no evildoer can withstand these weapons. And so the next point that I'd like to cover about is why Sikhs should know Shastars is about emulating Guru Maharaj Ji. So Sri Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj Ji expressed the relationship with Shastars for Khalsa. And positively, he wrote a love poem for them. As kripan khando khadg tupak tavar artir, saf sirohi sahthi, yeh hamare peer. Guru Maharaj is illustrating that these are different shastras. As, kripan, khando, khadg, tupak, tavar, tir, saf, sirohi, sahthi. These are our peer. These are our respected elders. That we have so much to learn from Shastars. We have special places for them to sit. Asi Shastars sajalneya. We don't just have them strewn about. They have special places. We have them especially with Guru Maharaj Ji. We adorn Guru Maharaj Ji's asthan with Shastars. They have this tight relationship, Maharaj Ji and Shastars. And so therefore, emulating Guru Maharaj Ji, we should also have this special relationship with Shastars. Because Guru Maharaj Ji had so much satkar for Shastars, that is enough reason for us who want to meet Akal Purkh through Maharaj Ji to emulate that respect. And a story that I want to share is when was shared to me by our brother Bhai Navdeep Singh from Surrey. Forgive me in advance for not sharing too much detail. I'd like to really just share the essence of the Sakhi. But when Sri Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj Ji was at Sri Hazur Sahib, before it was time for Maharaj Ji to depart, he told Mataji Sundar Kaur that she was to return to Delhi. And she was saying that Maharaj Ji, I can't go without your darshan. She got darshan of Maharaj Ji every day. And so to be able to go a day without that darshan was something that she couldn't fathom. And so Maharaj Ji told Mataji to do seva and darshan of Shastars each morning. And with that she would get his darshan. And so this is how much mahanta or importance that Maharaj Ji gave Shastars, to equate them with meeting him physically. So, and to go on from there, Sikhi is a saint-soldier religion. That is a fact. There are some people who may say that I am a Sikh of Guru Nanak. And perhaps this is said sometimes with the reasoning that Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji was all about, peace and equality, and really didn't have any inclination for war. And this is true, but it is ignorant, forgive me, of many other factors. There's a really good katha in English by Parminder Singh Ji of Guru Nanak Academy, and where he speaks about this, and he goes into those factors of why we can't just simply say that I am a Sikh of Guru Nanak. I would encourage you to listen to that, but a couple of things that I would like to go through is just that those people may not know about Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji, that he carried a dong with him everywhere. Bhai Gurdas Ji describes Maharaj Ji's appearance when he went to Makkah. He donned blue attire. Baba fir Makke gaya, neel bastar thare banwari, asa hath kitab kach, kuja bang musla tari. That he held a staff in his hand, and he had his kitab in his armpit, and then he caught hold of his middle part and mattress. But so Maharaj Ji carrying a dong with him, it was no ordinary walking stick. Maharaj Ji knew how to use Shastras. And not only this, but he was fearless. Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj Ji wasn't entirely a pacifist. When the Mughal ruler Babur came in, he had his reign of terrorism. Guru Maharaj Ji passed his security and went right up to his face, and we all know, called him Zabur, Babur to Zabur. And so being a Sikh of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji is also being a Gursikh of a warrior. And so that is something for us to internalize as well. To another point about Sikhi being a saint-soldier religion, the Sikhs have a reputation around the world as being fearless warriors. You can find many quotes around the internet of leaders or ministers or commanders praising Sikh regiments as being fearless, that they slept standing up, or they ran into war with their swords after they ran out of ammunition. One quote that I will share is by John A. Macdonald, where the Prime Minister of Canada, who said, "War will come someday between England and the United States, and India can do us yeoman's service by sending an army of Sikhs." You may have seen recently after Harjit Singh Sajjan became the Minister of Defense that there was that photo where there was Johnny McDonald on one side saying, "Send me an army of Sikhs," and then there was Harjit Singh Sajjan, who is now the leader of the Sikh army, of the Canadian Army. So. For that to come into fruition, I mean, so the Sikh Heritage Museum about this quote said that it's a significant historical anecdote for Sikhs and how far the reputation of Sikhs preceded them across the Atlantic. It is a reminder of how we were viewed as a people as far away as even North America prior to our arrival here. That tales of these Sikhs, of fearless warriors, was reaching North America before we had even gotten here. And so I think that this is not all for nothing. It's been very clear from the outset that Sikhi has this element of Shastars that we all share. And I smile here, but really when it comes down to it, if you are a Guru Sikh and Guru Maharaj has actually given you hukam. Bhavanja hukam which Maharaj has said कि Shastra Vidya te Ghordswari da abhyas karna. So if nothing else, Maharaj has told you directly, do Vidya of Shastras. Get Vidya of Shastras. And so I want to pause and talk about this for a little bit. There was in the previous presentation there was some talk at the end about Shastra Vidya and that spiritual connection. If I may touch on that briefly, Shastra Vidya, doing Shastra Vidya. I'm going to say something else first, and then I'll get back to that. Forgive me. We can look at this hukam in two ways. Shastra Vidya te Ghordswari da abhyas karna. That we can take a look at it at its face value. Shastra Vidya, Gatka, Ghordswari, horseback riding. And the other is to take a look at it in its overall context. Shastra Vidya is hand-to-hand combat and weapons training. Ghordswari is a method of transportation. If we look at the broader context, we could subscribe to either interpretation, and I think they would be, if I may be so bold, I will say that either is correct. But personally, I subscribe to both. And if we take a look at Shastra Vidya as Gatka and why it's so important, or how our connection can be made even more with Vaheguruji through Shastra Vidya, it again comes back to emulating Guru Sahib, where when we're learning Shastra Vidya and you hold a Siddhi Sahib in your hand and you learn a new Vad, and you may think to yourself that it could very well be, as I stand in this pentra and I move my arm in this way, that this Vad may also have been done by Tan Sri Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji Maharaj. And that's something that I think that really fosters that connection that we have with Maharaj Ji, that Guru Maharaj Ji, Shabad Guru was pratak in body form, and those bodies did perform actions. And by us emulating those, personally, for me, makes me feel as though I am increasing my relationship or solidifying it. I'm not looking to answer that question, but just to offer my own experience there. So if Maharaji is saying to learn the Sikh martial art and to know horseback riding, then one can go to the nearest akhada or equestrian stables and learn those things. And just a little bit, I know that we're talking more about Shastars, but just on the note of Ghordsawari, the same thing sort of goes for that as well. The relationship between quote unquote man and beast, when you're sitting on a ghoda and you're walking, trotting, galloping, that sort of connection that you share there. It's interesting because a ghoda or a horse is an animal that stays in hukam. Animals by their nature stay in hukam. They don't reason themselves out of obeying hukam. They're in it. That is I think you could say the part of the definition of being in hukam is being like an animal in that regard. And so when we build a relationship with a horse and we do Ghordsawari, we learn that about staying in hukam. And in the other way, the overall context, so back in the days when this hukam was given, Shastra Vidya, it was a complete martial art, and it had the hand-to-hand element as well as the weapons combat. But the sad reality is that for the most part, that hand-to-hand element has been partially, if not fully, lost through the centuries. And if we don't supplement our Shastra Vidya, Astra Vidya with a hand-to-hand component, then we would be woefully unprepared if the circumstances ever called upon using that vidya, where we needed to do self-defense or defense of others. In addition, Astra technology has evolved so much, and our training should be up to date with that as well. And I'm sure you've all heard the idiom or saying or kahavat that of bringing a knife to a gunfight. And so it means entering a confrontation being inadequately equipped. And it's important to know the safety, handling, and use of current technology. And a quick anecdote, again, I know that we were focusing on Shastras, but again, to give a little bit of perspective on that broader context of Ghordsawari, a few years ago, or some years ago more, one of our elders was saying to a group of Sikhs that all of us should be able to drive cars, auto and manual. We should be able to ride motorcycles and buses, etc. We should be able to do all of these. To him, he was explaining that it fell under being a part of Tyad Bhartyad, of being able to control a method of transportation. And he was sharing this because there was a group of Bibiyan who were going to Corps United camp in Calgary. They had a lot of difficulty finding two drivers, and he was saying that if any one of us were able, we would have been able to do that seva.
There's the one Ratnama says Shastar Vidya Sikhi Nahi Na Turang Aswari, Turang is Koda, Na Turang Aswari, Sikhi Dina Rat Kamai Tankhaya Hapai. So if you never learned Shastar Vidya, if you don't know how to drive or ride horse, then je Sikhi di rat nahi apnaunde, te assi vade tankhai hai. So Bhai Sahib ji had already explained about Shastar Vidya, why Shastar Vidya is important. At the time जिन्हें पर गल की थी या पैसा 10 के हटे या doesn't matter with Shastra or without Shastra, hand-to-hand combat or with swords or spear or whatever. And instead of horse, bikes and cars, we should know the reason. If we don't know how to ride, we are dependent. Because someone come and if I'm sick, I have to go to hospital. I can't go because I don't know how to drive. Someone needs to come to pick me up to give me a ride to the hospital. or I can't give right to someone who doesn't matter, someone is dying beside me, I can't take them to hospital because I don't know how to drive. If I don't know how to do Shastar, I can't protect anyone. I can't save anyone. Doesn't matter it's my family or my friend or unknown person. I can't save them because I don't know how to use my Shastar. So Guru Pasha ne hukumnama ਜਿਵੇਂ ਭਾਈ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਰਹਿਤਨਾਮਾ ਭਾਈ ਚੋਪਾ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਵਿਦਿਆ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਨਾ ਤੁਰੰਗ ਅਸਵਾਰੀ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੀ ਨਾ ਰਹਿਤ ਕਮਾਈ ਤਨਖਾਹੀਆ ਹੈ ਭਾਰੀ. According to this ਰਹਿਤਨਾਮਾ too, we should learn shastar vidya and horse riding or martial art and driving. Thank you.
बहुत धन्यवाद जी, बहुत धन्यवाद. Bhai Sahib, could you also mention, because with this topic, I'm finished and I would like to move on to something else. But before I do, could you please share with everybody about Panchashtra Parvan?
Guru Sahib de ਬਾਣੀ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਕਿਸਮ ਬਾਣੀ ਫਰਮਾਉਂਦੇ ਆ ਤੀਰੋ ਤਫੰਗੋ ਬੜੋ ਰਾਮ ਜੰਗੋ. ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਨੇ 5 ਸ਼ਸਤਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰਵਾਨਗੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ. ਵੈਸੇ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਸ਼ਸਤਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰਵਾਨਗੀ ਆ. ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਦੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਗੋਬਿੰਦ ਸਿੰਘ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਦੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਮਰ ਕਸੇ ਵਿੱਚ 36 ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸਨ. 36 ਸ਼ਸਤਰ were in his only ਕਮਰ ਕਸਾ. So ਤੀਰੋ ਤਫੰਗੋ ਬੜੋ ਰਾਮ ਜੰਗੋ ਧਨਰਦਾ ਅਨੀਅਰ ਕਮੰਦ ਕੋਟਲਾ 5 ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਪ੍ਰਵਾਨ. ਗੁਰੂ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਨੇ 5 ਸ਼ਸਤਰਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ 5 ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਐਟ ਲੀਸਟ ਅ ਸਿੱਖ ਸ਼ੁੱਡ ਕੈਰੀ ਵਿਦ them. Thank you.
Dhanyavad ji. The next thing that I would like to talk about is this phrase that we all know. When all other means have failed, followed by
righteous to pick up the sword.
Hanji. It is but righteous to draw the sword. And so this comes from Zafarnama. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj Ji says, Chokar az ham hai hilte dar guzast, halal ast burdan basham shir dast. When all other means have failed, it is but righteous to draw the sword. And so I'd like to take a look at what this has meant in part of our, forgive me, part of our embarrassing past and present. How we have interpreted this of when all other means have failed, or perhaps our overlooking of this prescription. So we've seen it recently where somebody with whom we disagree speaks at Sri Akal Takht Sahib, te bas swords come out. Or people try to take tables and chairs out of the langar hall and the swords come out. Or a bully at school pushes us to the ground and we take out our kirpan to show, hey, look what I have, look what I can do. And it makes me wonder, like, who do we think we are? We're not just these, baboons who have come across a knife and are brandishing it. Like, do we actually think that we are getting insaf, or are we getting justice by pulling out our Siri Sahib in a school or in a Gurdwara Sahib? Somebody on stage doesn't believe in the same Bani that we read, or that we don't read, or insults our Mahaprabhu, and then we fight right there in Darbar. All other means have failed, right? Sangaji, please forgive me, but this is stupidity on levels that anger and sadden me like few other things. We claim to take these actions to defend the honor of Gurbani, or to defend the honor of, this. I mean, just when we are trying to defend the honor of Gurbani, but we're disrespecting it by breaking out in a fight in Darbar. Or, our Mahapurukh gets insulted and so we have to defend them, but, our Guru is sitting there in Darbar and we are breaking out in fight because our Mahapurukh got insulted. And I doubt anybody here would think that these actions are justified, but they are a very real part of our recent history. When it comes to what Guru Sahib has prescribed, time and time again, we'll see that it was exemplified practically. Atme Paatshah, Tan Sri Guru Harkrishan Sahib Ji Maharaj Ji helping the needy. Grihasti Jivan, that was exemplified. Bhakti, this is exemplified. I mean, anything that you can think of that was prescribed by Guru Maharaj Ji, they exemplified it practically. And so when all other means have failed, Maharaj Ji has also given us examples of how far things can go before it is righteous to pick up the sword. Panjme Paatshah, Tan Sri Guru Arjan Dev Maharaj Ji, it took his Shahidi before Sheme Paatshah Tan Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji Maharaj Ji picked up the sword for the Panth. It took the Shahidi of Nome Paatshah Tan Sri Guru Tegh Bahadur Maharaj Ji, and for that cease to be received by Tan Sri Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj Ji before he picked up the sword and created an army of the Khalsa. So this doesn't necessarily mean that a Shahidi has to occur before we pick up the Shastra, but it gives us need to pause and ponder. Just how much have we tried before we resorted to picking up the Shastra? We need to tread carefully here. We're incredibly lucky that residing here in Canada, it's illegal to carry knives, open or concealed, but we've been granted that right to practice our dharam openly. And we have the city side that there are no issues. We can don our city side.
Just to add a further point,
Please.
Quoting the Zafernama, right? That was written after the Shahidi the Jabde, and it was kind of a basically telling what is it that we're still willing to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And Guru Sahib was still willing to engage in a dialogue with the Aurangzeb and then later Bahadur Shah, even after the death of the Sarjad and and so many steps.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. And to your point, Guru Maharaj Ji, before a war would begin, there would be that writer sent and saying, hey, can we solve this by another means? Let's talk this out before any war was to begin. And so sitting here, we have so many resources available to us through civil and non-violent means to right wrongs. But taking the figurative or literal sword for the ridiculous reasons that have occurred in the past, it's nearly guaranteed to have us lose that privilege. And for what will that have been worth? I don't think very much. As discussed earlier, this is a religion of Sant Sipahi. The Sant aspect of that is essential to work on the bhakti so that self-restraint and wisdom can be employed before the use of Shakti. Cooler heads must always prevail. So going back to how lucky we are to be able to wear our city side, I've read in passing that that in other places around the world, there's talk of replacing the kirpan with something else that Sikhs can wear just at the level of the law. But the Shastar is just too much a part of our identity. Sri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji Maharaj could have used a Siri Sahib for Miri and a Mala for Piri, but he used two Siri Sahibs. Two Siri Sahibs, both to represent Miri and Piri. The Shastar is also a part of our Panj Kakal. And the very pahal that we drink when we receive our identity as Guru Da Sikh is Khande Ki Pahal. Maharaji prepares it with a Shastar and makes it a part of us. We internalize the power of that Shastar. It's inextricably linked. The Shastar is inextricably linked to the identity of a Gursikh. And it befits us all, each, to make the Shastar a part of our being. So, Bolchak maaf karni ji. I'm certain that I made a lot of mistakes. I ask for Sangat's forgiveness and for the forgiveness of our Satguru. If for the next 18 minutes, we'd like to do a discussion, or if anybody has questions.
It's also important to know the laws of the jurisdiction in which you live, to be able to, abide by what the laws are. For us in Florida, we were an at-will state, and somebody can, in a situation, fire a gun at you, and shoot and kill you, and later on, it's authority to say, I was being approached in a threatening way, and that's just an absolves of what could have been potentially murder. Stand your ground law. Stand your ground law. So that's yeah, so yeah.
Hanji? I don't think it was a question. It was a point, Hanaji. That
yeah.
To know the bylaws of your jurisdiction is important. To know how much force you can use as is permitted by law. And if I'm correct, you're suggesting that to use that appropriate action when it's necessary.
Yeah, you should always be prepared. Once you know where you are and what the law is and where you are, if you plan to hold a justice, and if you don't, it goes back to the same earlier. Being an expert gunfight, the other person could potentially be armed, and he would be being in a situation, you may be on the opposing side.
Hanji. So having that preparation,
Right.
it's like you don't start to dig a well when your house is on fire.
Right.
You have that preparation done beforehand, and so.
There was actually news, and I forgot it was in what city it was, but there was this Sikh individual who was arrested for carrying a kafan. I forgot where it was, but it's somewhere in the U.S. And he had gone to the shopping mall and he was arrested for that.
Actually, so Japnam Singh would be better able to say, so there are organizations in Canada and the U.S. and abroad as well that deal with cases. There's WSO, World Sikh Organization.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only one in Canada.
Actually.
In America has about 2 or 3, United States, Sikh Coalition, SALNET, right? There's 3 or 4 of them in America.
Mm-hmm.
Those are by jurisdiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were saying about bullying, right? And you and not using the kafan when you're being bullied. Like, for example, if you have kids, then what is the best way to instruct them in regards to how to properly handle their shastar or handle their kafan in situations where there may be conflict?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a couple points.
The best. So the question was to give a few points about the best way to explain to kids about how to handle your shastar in bullying cases at school.
In bullying cases. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think.
Just generally in school.
Gee. So, as a father of a grade 1 child, she doesn't carry a city sahib. She's not. She Amritari nahi hegi. But for me to think about her in that context of say having a Shastar and being bullied at school, it would always, in my mind, go back to get a teacher. I mean, it really doesn't matter about what other kids will say. You snitched, you told the teacher, I'm telling on you, that kind of thing. Like, those things come and they go. But from what we've seen time and time again, perhaps not very, very many times, but the few times where a child has pulled out a city sahib at school, my greatest fear in that regard is for everybody to lose that privilege. And so for a school ground fight to be the reason of that would be, again, I think, just very silly. I think perhaps categorically I can say a child should never, ever pull out their city sahib at school and should always go for a teacher. But I mean, please, anybody else who would disagree or add to that, please do. Haji.
So I guess in that situation, like a hand-to-hand combat would be less lethal. Like,
absolutely. To know how to defend themselves, perfectly said. Yes, to be able to defend yourself with in hand-to-hand combat. Thank you, Singh.